Hey, listen up, because what I'm about to tell you is going to change everything you think you know about attraction. Most guys make this massive mistake when they want a woman to miss them. They do more. They text more, they call more, they show up more. But here's the brutal truth. That's the exact opposite of what creates deep longing. That's the exact opposite of what makes her feel your absence in her bones. Today, I'm going to show you how to become unforgettable, not by doing more, but by doing less. Not by being everywhere, but by being strategically nowhere. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll understand why the most powerful men in history knew this secret. Why they could walk away from anything and have people begging for their return. So buckle up, because we're about to dive deep into the psychology of absence and how to use it to create the kind of magnetic pull that keeps her thinking about you long after you're gone. First thing you need to understand, absence only works when there's something worth missing. See, most guys disappear, but they were never really present in the first place. You can't create a void where there was nothing to begin with. That's like trying to miss something you never had. So before we talk about making her feel your absence, we need to talk about creating a presence that's worth remembering. Real presence isn't about being physically there all the time. It's about being mentally and emotionally engaged when you are there. It's about those moments when you're with her and she feels like she's the only person in the world. Think about it this way. When you're scrolling your phone while she's talking, you're physically present, but energetically absent. But when you put that phone down, look her in the eyes, and really listen to what she's saying, that's presence. That's what she'll miss when you're gone. Here's where most guys mess up. They become routine. They become expected. She knows exactly when you're going to text. She knows exactly what you're going to say. She knows your schedule better than you do. And predictability is the enemy of attraction. When someone becomes predictable, they become background noise. They become furniture. You don't miss furniture. You don't think about it. It's just there. But when you break the pattern, when you become unpredictable, that's when her mind starts racing. Where is he? What's he doing? Why hasn't he texted me like he usually does? Suddenly, you're not background noise anymore. You're front and center in her thoughts, and that's exactly where you want to be. I knew a guy, let's call him Marcus, who was dating this woman for 3 months. Every single day, he'd text her good morning at 7 a.m. Every single day, he'd call her at lunch. Every single evening, he'd ask about her day. Clockwork. She got comfortable. She took it for granted. Then one day, Marcus decided to switch it up. No good morning text, no lunch call, no evening check-in. And you know what happened? Her phone was blowing up. Where are you? Is everything okay? Are you mad at me? Marcus didn't ignore her completely. He just shifted the dynamic. He became less available, less predictable. And suddenly, she was chasing him instead of the other way around. That's the power of breaking patterns. That's the power of strategic absence. Look, this is crucial. Most men, when they're interested in a woman, they make her their entire world. Their hobbies disappear. Their friends become strangers. Their goals take a backseat. Everything revolves around her. And while that might seem romantic, it's actually repulsive, because it communicates that you have nothing else going on in your life. But when you have your own missions, your own goals, your own social circle, your own interests, suddenly you become a man with options. You become a man who's choosing to spend time with her, not a man who has to spend time with her because he has nothing else to do. And that choice, that's what makes you valuable. I want you to think about the most attractive people you know. What do they all have in common? They're busy. They're passionate about something. They have their own thing going on. They're not sitting around waiting for someone else to give their life meaning. They create their own meaning. And people are drawn to that energy. So here's what you do. You dive deep into your purpose, you reconnect with old friends, you pick up that hobby you abandoned, you start that business you've been thinking about, you hit the gym not for her, but for you. You become so focused on building your life that she becomes just one part of it, not the whole thing. And here's what happens when you do this. She starts to wonder what's keeping you so busy. She starts to get curious about this life you're building without her. She starts to realize that your time is valuable, that access to you is a privilege, not a right. And that's when she starts to feel your absence deeply. Every guy thinks being the shoulder to cry on is the way to a woman's heart. But here's the reality. When you're always available for her problems, when you're always there to fix her mood, when you're always the one she calls when she's upset, you become her therapist, not her lover. Therapists are important, but they're not irreplaceable. They're not the person you think about when you're lying in bed at night. They're not the person you miss when they're gone. They're just there to solve problems, and once the problem is solved, they're forgotten until the next crisis. But when you stop being so available, when you stop dropping everything to handle her emotional emergencies, when you start having boundaries around your time and energy, suddenly, you're not the therapist anymore. You're the man she wants to share her victories with, not just her defeats. This doesn't mean you become cold or uncaring. It means you become selective. You choose when to engage and when to step back. You show her that your emotional energy is valuable, that it's not unlimited, and that she needs to earn access to it. Here's something most guys never think about. Mystery is magnetic. When she knows everything about you, when she can predict your every move, when there are no surprises left, there's nothing left to discover. And if there's nothing left to discover, there's nothing to miss. But when you create gaps in her knowledge, when you have experiences she's not part of, when you have thoughts she's not privy to, when you have a life that exists beyond her reach, suddenly she's intrigued. Suddenly she's curious. Suddenly she's thinking about you, trying to fill in those gaps. This could be as simple as mentioning a conversation you had with someone she doesn't know, or a place you went that she's never been, or a decision you made that she had no input on. It's not about being secretive. It's about maintaining your individuality.
It's about showing her that you're a complete person with or without her. I remember this one time I was talking to a woman I was dating, and I mentioned that I had dinner at this new restaurant downtown. She immediately wanted to know who I went with. Was it work? Was it friends? Was it family? I didn't give her a detailed explanation. I just said it was good and changed the subject. You could see her mind working, trying to figure out the details, trying to piece together this part of my life she wasn't part of. That curiosity gap, that unknown element, that's what kept me in her thoughts long after our conversation ended. That's what made her feel my absence even when I was right there, because she realized there were parts of me she didn't have access to. Most guys are terrified of silence. They think every quiet moment needs to be filled with words. They think conversation has to be constant. They think if they're not talking, she's going to get bored and leave. But here's the truth. Comfortable silence is more intimate than constant chatter. When you're comfortable with silence, when you don't feel the need to fill every moment with noise, you communicate confidence. You communicate that you're secure enough in yourself that you don't need constant validation through conversation. You show her that your presence alone is enough. And when you're not there, when that comfortable silence is gone, she feels the absence of your calm energy. She misses the peace you brought to her chaos. She realized that your presence wasn't about what you said, it was about how you made her feel. Think about it this way. Some of the most powerful moments in relationships happen in silence. The quiet moments, when you're just existing together. When words aren't necessary. When your energy is enough. And when that energy is gone, when that silence is replaced by emptiness, that's when she feels your absence most deeply. Here's something that's going to hit hard. Most guys are constantly seeking approval from the women they're interested in. They change their opinions to match hers. They agree with everything she says. They modify their behavior to get her approval. And while this might seem like the right thing to do, it's actually destroying attraction. When you need her validation, when you're constantly looking for her approval, when you're modifying yourself to please her, you're communicating that her opinion of you is more important than your opinion of yourself. And that's weak energy. That's needy energy. That's the opposite of attractive. But when you stop seeking her approval, when you have your own opinions and you stick to them, when you're willing to disagree, when you're willing to risk her disapproval to maintain your integrity, suddenly you become a challenge. You become someone who can't be controlled, someone who can't be manipulated. And here's what happens when you stop chasing her validation. She starts chasing yours. She starts wondering why you're not trying to impress her. She starts wondering why her opinion doesn't seem to matter to you as much as she thought it would. And that confusion, that uncertainty, that's what makes her think about you. I want you to understand something. Validation seeking is like a drug. The more you do it, the more you need it. The more you chase her approval, the more you'll crave it. But when you stop, when you find your validation internally, when you approve of yourself first, that's when you become truly attractive. This is the most important one, so pay attention. Strategic withdrawal doesn't mean disappearing completely. It doesn't mean playing games. It doesn't mean being cruel. It means knowing when to pull back, knowing when to create space, knowing when to let her miss you. Most guys do one of two extremes. They're either all in or all out. They're either suffocating her with attention or they're completely absent. Both approaches fail because they lack strategy, they lack timing, they lack finesse. Strategic withdrawal is about reading the situation. It's about recognizing when she's starting to take you for granted and pulling back before it becomes a problem. It's about creating space when things are getting too comfortable, too predictable, too routine. Here's how you do it. When she starts responding to your messages hours later, you do the same. When she starts canceling plans, you become less available. When she starts treating your time like it's unlimited, you show her it's not. But here's the key. You don't do this out of anger. You don't do this to punish her. You do this to maintain balance. You do this to preserve attraction. You do this to remind her that access to you is a privilege, not a right. Think about it like this. If you're always available, if you're always there, if you're always accessible, then your presence has no value. But when you pull back, when you create scarcity, when you show her that your time and attention are limited, suddenly your presence becomes valuable again. Here's the foundation of everything we've talked about. You cannot make someone miss you if you don't believe you're worth missing. You cannot create absence that matters if you don't believe your presence has value. Self-worth isn't something you get from her. It's something you develop within yourself. When you have unshakable self-worth, when you know your value, when you understand what you bring to the table, you don't need her to validate it. You don't need her to confirm it. You know it. And that knowing, that confidence, that self-assurance, that's what makes you magnetic. Men with genuine self-worth don't beg, they don't chase, they don't try to convince anyone of their value. They simply are valuable, and people recognize it, they feel it, they're drawn to it. And when that energy is gone, when that confidence is absent, that's when she feels the void. I want you to think about the most confident people you know. How do they handle rejection? How do they handle disappointment? How do they handle being told no? They don't fall apart. They don't beg. They don't try to change the other person's mind. They simply move on because they know their worth isn't determined by one person's opinion. And that's the energy that makes people miss you. That's the energy that creates deep longing. That's the energy that makes her realize what she had when it's gone. This is where boys become men. Outcome independence means you're fine with whatever happens. You're not attached to a specific result. You're not desperate for a particular outcome. You're simply being yourself and letting the chips fall where they may. When you're outcome independent, when you're genuinely okay with her staying or leaving, when you're truly fine with her missing you or not missing you, you create a different kind of energy. You create the energy of abundance, the energy of choice, the energy of a man who has options. And women can sense this energy. They can feel when you're desperate for their attention, and they can feel when you're genuinely indifferent to whether they give it to you or not. And paradoxically, it's the indifference that makes them want to give you more attention. Think about it this way. If you're trying to make her miss you, if you're strategically creating absence with the goal of making her chase you, then you're still outcome dependent. You're still attached to her response. You're still seeking her validation. But when you create absence simply because you have better things to do, when you pull back simply because you value your own time, when you become less available simply because you're building your own life, that's genuine outcome independence, and that's what creates real attraction. Here's something most guys never consider. Timing matters more than technique. You can do everything right, but if your timing is off, you'll fail. You can have perfect strategy, but if you execute it at the wrong moment, it won't work. The best time to create absence is when things are going well, not when they're going badly. When she's enjoying your company, when she's responding positively, when she's engaged, that's when you pull back slightly. That's when you create space. That's when you remind her that your attention isn't guaranteed. Pulling back when things are already cold, when she's already distant, when she's already losing interest, that's not strategic, that's just giving up. But pulling back when she's warm, when she's interested, when she's engaged, that's when your absence will be felt most deeply. I knew a guy who would always disappear right when things were getting good, right when the woman was starting to really like him, right when she was getting comfortable. And at first, I thought he was self-sabotaging. But then I realized he was actually brilliant. He was creating absence at the exact moment when it would have maximum impact. When she was expecting him to be there, when she was looking forward to his message, when she was anticipating his call, that's when he'd step back, and that's when she'd feel his absence most intensely. Look, creating absence that matters isn't about playing games. It's about understanding human psychology. It's about recognizing that scarcity creates value, that mystery creates attraction, that space creates longing. When you master these principles, when you understand how to be present when you're there and absent when you're not, when you develop a life so rich and fulfilling that she becomes just one part of it, not the whole thing, that's when you become unforgettable. That's when your absence is felt deeply, not because you're manipulating her emotions, but because you've genuinely become valuable, because you've become someone worth missing, because you've become a man who adds value to her life rather than taking it away. Remember, the goal isn't to make her suffer. The goal isn't to hurt her. The goal is to maintain attraction, to preserve mystery, to ensure that your presence in her life remains a choice, not a habit.
So, start today. Start building that life. Start developing that presence. Start creating that value. And watch how everything changes. Watch how she starts to see you differently. Watch how she starts to feel your absence when you're gone. Because at the end of the day, the most attractive thing you can be is a man who doesn't need her, but chooses to be with her. A man who has options, but selects her. A man whose absence is felt deeply because his presence adds genuine value to her world. That's the secret. That's the key. That's how you make her feel your absence deeply. Not through manipulation, but through genuine value. Not through games, but through growth. Not through absence alone, but through presence so powerful that when it's gone, she can't help but miss it.